Now, if you had told me before yesterday, before the day that a new episode of The Bad Batch was dropping alongside the first episode of Season 3 of The Mandalorian, if you'd told me that I would end up enjoying the former more so than the latter, that I'd end up enjoying a mid-season Bad Batch episode more so than the opener of The Mandalorian, I either would have thought you were crazy or that it must have been one hell of an amazing episode of The Bad Batch to be better than what would no doubt be a great opener for The Mandalorian. And even though I wouldn't call this episode of The Bad Batch amazing, nor was, as I covered in my review yesterday, the opener for Mando bad by any stretch, I thought it was still good and enjoyable for the most part. I did still feel like if I had to pick one or the other as the winner yesterday, it'd be The Bad Batch, mainly because it felt like a stronger episode, especially for its given series. Also, there was just a lot more to sink your teeth into story-wise with it. This was an episode that I feel like much of the rest of the season had been slowly building towards. This was almost a turning point episode for a great many things, potentially. I feel like this is when and where the Bad Batch finally start to see that working for Sid isn't all it's cracked up to be, and that the Empire is bad, like really, really bad, and Palpatine has been doing some terrible things behind the scenes for a while now. This was, or probably will be, a sort of tipping point episode for them. Though I do have to say that when the episode opened with a random clone commando running for his life in an otherwise seemingly abandoned ship and eventually getting attacked and killed by something, I did kind of sigh and thought to myself, well, this has filler written all over it. The Bad Batch is some way, somehow going to come upon the ship. They're going to run around it for a little while being chased by this monster, and we'll end up with a scary episode that gives us some strong alien vibes. And I'm talking about the movie from back in the day. But then after that opening scene, the episode shifted to Mount Tantus and the Imperial Research Facility there, and my fears of this being little more than some type of filler started to ease. We're then introduced to Dr. Helmlock, who ends up having this rather interesting conversation with the imprisoned Nalase, one that implies they know each other and have worked together in the past, and where they talk about how her research now carries on without her, one that serves the higher purpose of the Emperor. She, however, wants no part of any of this anymore, feeling a little unmotivated lately, or since the destruction of her homeworld and her people, go figure. And so the Doctor finds out that there is another Kaminoan still alive, that being Prime Minister Lamassu, and he wants him brought here. Then, as kind of talked about before, I was happy to see that the Bad Batch actually was getting upset at Sid and calling her out for not coming to help rescue them in the previous couple episodes. And that includes Omega, who has defended Sid in the past, and, well, she was probably the angriest overall. She was the most accusatory, which I thought was really nice to see. Some kind of anger out of the usually very upbeat, very understanding, and very happy Omega. Ultimately then, after agreeing to another job for her to, surprise, surprise, check out this crashed ship, they, the Bad Batch, decide it's time to part ways with her after. They even kind of ponder just being done with her right here and now, not even giving her a cut of this current mission, but it's Tech who wisely points out that she has plenty of information on them, which seems like it could very well tie into the end of this episode, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. Anyway, the Bad Batch get to the planet where this unmarked down ship is, and they go on board. That then does indeed lead to some creeping around an abandoned ship with a monster on the loose type stuff, some alien type stuff, which is all well and good and well done here. The music, again, Kevin Kiner, does not disappoint. They then find a lab on the ship where Omega recognizes Kaminoan cloning tech, and soon enough they encounter what is essentially a hungry cloned baby Xylo beast. Which was pretty awesome. I think it's great to revisit something that was more or less left hanging from the Clone Wars. In fact, the show is generally at its best when it does feel like it's carrying on the stories from that show, when it feels like a direct sort of sequel to the Clone Wars. And, of course, in that series, we know that initially Palpatine seemed really interested in having the creature's scales studied to potentially make stronger armor for the clone troopers. But something tells me his interest, or the interest of the scientists on this project, that it's gone beyond just that, if that was indeed ever the original interest to begin with, and not some type of cover used by Palpatine to do something far more sinister behind the scenes. And here in this episode we learn that when the Bad Batch are shooting it, and Tech discovers evidence of this later, But this cloned version, has modified scales that are stronger than the original, so to some degree Palpatine was being honest about wanting to research that. And I can't help but think and believe that this is not even close to the end game for this project we've seen alluded to, that this is all leading to something much, much bigger overall. Again, beyond just making some really strong armor or something like that. Not that it can't be a part of it, I just don't know where exactly it might ultimately be going. Could even be that Palpatine is wanting to make himself the perfect host or something like that. Or maybe the perfect army and it's all about the armor plating when it comes to the Xylo Beast. Either way, I do think it will ultimately tie into what's going on in the Mandalorian and the interest in Grogu's blood we've seen there and the project we've seen alluded to there, especially with Dr. Pershing. I think this is all going to be connected and that after these two current seasons wrap up, we'll have a much better grasp on that bigger picture of what exactly is going on with these mysterious projects. And I think that is all probably fun speculation for another time and another video. And so getting back to the episode, eventually the Empire, led by none other than Scorch, the clone commando from way back in the Clone Commando game, he shows up to capture the creature and ends up succeeding in subduing it and bringing it aboard the new ship. But before they simply fly away, we see Imperial ships landing at the city that we were shown initially, the one on this planet and the one that the Xylo Beast was attacking or about to attack. And for a brief moment I was like, why are they landing here? Until I thought, oh yeah, witnesses, which later we learned from Scorch are going to be dealt with. It's also at this time that Scorch tells Dr. Hemlock that there was an unknown military vessel there that got away, and that the Doctor now wants him to find out about it. And I wonder who might be able to help find that ship and crew. Who might know who it belongs to? Who might have heard through the proverbial grapevine that the Empire is looking for this particular ship? Certainly not someone who is so connected that she heard about a downed ship and got her crew there before even the Empire could, as seen in this episode. And that's an Empire that clearly didn't want anyone discovering anything that was aboard it and tried to get there as quickly as they could. And yes, I'm very much implying that this is the perfect time and place for Sid to turn on the Bad Batch, to sell them out to the Empire. And if it doesn't happen that way, I'm going to be pretty disappointed. I don't want her to ultimately have a heart of gold. And I do think the show would and could go there, could ultimately have her betray them without remorse. And I say that because despite this, yeah, I think being a kid's show more or less, they are not afraid to go to some really, really dark places from time to time, including in this very episode where the townspeople are rounded up and taken away to be dealt with. And they're doing that simply because they saw something they weren't supposed to. Well, along with this, with Sid's potential betrayal, we also know that Lama Su, who wants his freedom and is willing to do whatever he has to, he's going to tell the Empire that the most important thing to Nala Se is none other than Omega, and that Sid can help them find. And call me sadistic if you want, but I really do want Sid to be willing to betray Omega, who has stuck up for her many times before. And this could be a great opportunity to learn a little something for Omega, to find out and to realize that trust is not something to be given out so lightly. Either way, another interesting thing of note is at the end of the episode, Hunter said to send this information that they'd found on the ship about the Xylo Beast and Palpatine and all that, to send it to Echo and Rex to see what they make of it or what they can do with it, which makes me wonder if we will indeed get some episodes that feature just the two of them. And so all in all here, though this wasn't an amazing episode, like I said at the top, it was still a really, really good, well-balanced episode. And by that I mean it had plenty of Bad Batch in it. Though Omega wasn't, too front and center either, where she maybe can sometimes get a little annoying and try to steal the show. It then also, at the same time, gave us some good Empire stuff, which usually kind of takes place in episodes not featuring the Bad Batch. And overall, a lot of big picture, a lot of progression, a lot of hints for more to come. And so again, this was all a really, really good, well-balanced episode, and I hope we get more like this in the future, because I feel like whatever they did here is the secret formula that makes this show work. Well, that's all I got for you this time. Now it's your turn to take to the comments below and tell me what you thought of this episode of The Bad Batch, or tell me who you think yesterday's winner was. Was it Mando, or was it indeed The Bad Batch? And no, it doesn't matter either way, it's all in good fun. Either way, do take to the comments below, let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.